Great. So are folks ready to start by checking in? Cool. I will go first since I have the mic. I'm going to change my name after, but I'm Emily Megas Russell. I use she, her pronouns. I have a new background, which involves this ridiculous fake plant lamp situation that's in my house. Yes, that I have grown to love now. And I'm wearing a black sweater and I have white skin.
I'll go next. Shay Witzberger. She, her, they, them on any given day. They, them today. I am wearing a collarless button-up, light acid wash denim shirt. I didn't think about having to narrate that before I put it on. And wire rim glasses. And I have long brown braids and white skin. And I'm in a white room with wooden trim. Somebody take it away from me, please. Get that, the hook.
I can go. This is Kaz. They, them, or he, him. Either's fine. I'm wearing my uniform, which is a flannel shirt. Right now it's a reddish flannel shirt and a black T-shirt and a black bandana and black plastic rim glasses, which is mostly what I wear most days, some variation of this exact outfit. I am also white. I have scruffy hair and facial hair. And yep, check.
I'm Kelsey, pale white lady. I've been staring at this computer since before the sun was up, and I'm still going. So my eyes are a little bloodshot, but I'm wearing one of my favorite cozy scarves. She, her pronouns, and that's it.
I'm Laura Stamus, she, her pronouns. I am also wearing my favorite scarf and my cozy black hoodie. And I have a nose piercing and some good earrings on tonight that are bugs. And there's like some doors behind me and a lamp.
I can go next. I'm Lana, and I'm a light skin. Can you guys hear me? Yes? Okay, good. I've got new headphones. I'm very excited. I'm a light-skinned Black woman with glasses and curly hair and a whole bunch of crap in the background.
I can go next. I'm Annaliese Griffin. I use she, her pronouns. I am joined here by this small elf named Olive. I have some Christmas lights up in the background as we've gotten festive here. And I'm wearing like the most gigantic sweater that's really just like, it's like an Afghan that has sleeves attached to it, which is really making me happy today. And I have on headphones and I have white skin.
My name is Maya Shulman Ment, and I am video free today because I need to take a walk outside after all day Zoom, similar to Kelsey.
I'm Bob Ozer, if you can hear me. I was freezing before. I'm a little cold now, too. He, him, pronouns. I'm with Kaz. I've got a uniform denim shirt. And that's about it.
Hi, this is Drift. I use they, them pronouns. I'm on the phone. It just works better for me. But I got to say, I love imagining your backgrounds and everything based on your descriptions. So super cool with the extra descriptions tonight. It's been fun picturing the stuff behind you. Anyway, thanks.
We clearly missed each other because we really got a little narrative there.
I'm Darlene. I am in a white bathrobe. I have gray hair. I have a new nose piercing. I'm in quarantine with my daughter. We're both sick, so we're hoping that it's not what we think it is, and I'm gonna try to stick it out through the night. If I have to leave, I apologize because I just can't stay out of the bathroom, so I'm sorry.
No apologies needed for taking care of yourself, and feel free to just listen or leave whenever you need to, Darlene.
Yeah, and thank you to everybody taking care of themselves tonight, being here and taking care of yourselves at the same time, and whatever you need to do to take care of yourself, please feel free to. Yeah. Okay, thank you all for checking in. We didn't miss anybody, right? I don't think so. Great. So let's do a brief somatic practice. You're welcome to turn your camera off or leave it on. And go ahead and bring your hands together. And you can kind of squeeze your hands if you'd like, or rub them, or really let your hands move. And I forgot to say, as I always say, you don't have to do this, of course. Everything we're doing here for this practice and pretty much everything we're doing here tonight is, elective. So it's up to you. But if you'd like, you can start squeezing your hands. You can keep your eyes open or closed. You can also rub your hands together or stretch your fingers. Give yourself a little hand massage. As you're doing this, just remembering how the hands represent action, represent the doing, part of our experience in the world. And so just acknowledging as you're doing this how much you've done today and how much you do. And see if while you're connecting with your hands, you can also connect with the body, the being, just being here. The being and the doing. Allowing the body to settle a little bit if that's possible for you today, while you also find movement in the hands. And if you'd like, you can rub the hands together, creating some friction, some heat between the hands. And take a few deep breaths. And then when you're ready, you can cover your eyes with your palms if you'd like. And again, taking a few deep breaths, really breathing in that energy that you created with your hands, that heat. And then you can release your face. And lastly, if you'd like, you can sort of brush off your arms. This is a little bit of a silly practice, but one that I think can be really helpful for releasing sort of the energy of the day. So brushing off whatever came before your arriving here today. And then taking just one breath in stillness. And when you're ready, we can re-enter the space together. And we'll move into checking in and reviewing our committee agreements. Maybe we can reverse those, just those two parts of this one agenda item. So review the agreements first and then do a brief, Shay and I have a brief check-in here. Oh, and you know what we don't have on our list, which is usually a sub-agenda item of this, which is note taker.
Which is checking in with Laura about if she feels
Yeah, checking in with Laura.
I feel great about taking notes.
Thank you, Laura.
I just want to say huge thank you to Laura, because I tried to help for a little bit of time, and that was so hard for the public forum. So like, wow, that was, thank you.
You did well. You did well. Your notes
I only did one. Thank you.
It is not an easy task, and I also am very appreciative. And Lana wrote in the chat, thank you, Laura, as well. And just a note about the chat, since I'm seeing that for folks joining us tonight, we use the chat for sharing things that it's going to be read out loud to the larger group. So keeping it sort of short and manageable to the larger process here. And there will be time for public participation. So that will be a time when you're welcome as a member of the public to share.
And that'll be by raising your little blue hand or otherwise letting us know that you want to share, not via the chat, unless you need that for accessibility reasons, which is fine.
Right. And another great use of the chat is to share something that you would like someone else to read if you don't feel available for speaking tonight. You can just let us know that in the chat. Okay, so agreements. I'm going to pin Christine to my screen. Oh, and a big thank you to Christine and Janet, our ASL interpreters who are here again with us tonight. Thankfully, gratefully. And I'm going to share my screen. I have a slightly new format here for the agreements. And does anybody feel like reading, starting us off?
I can start us off.
Thank you.
Let's see here. I can't tell if I have the whole screen.
I don't think you do. So why don't you just
Okay.
read this first part and then we can hand it off.
Okay, sounds good. Our agreements. In the process of doing work within the Community Safety Review, we will aim to be curious, acknowledge that we come from different places and different life experiences, center anti-racism as foundational in this process, center anti-oppression, including work to avoid and end racism, sexism, transphobia, and homophobia, ableism, saneism, and all other forms of oppression. Sanist oppression can look like pathologizing language, outing people's psychiatric labels, or engaging with people discriminatorily due to their physical, psychiatric labeling or disability.
Thank you, Lana.
You're welcome.
Does anybody want to read this snippet here?
I can do it.
I'll
If nobody else jump in.
I was going to say I'll do it.
You want to, Darlene? Go for it.
Sure. It says use both and thinking instead of either or thinking whenever possible. Use whoa, ouch, oops to pause, acknowledge hurt, and take responsibility. Acknowledge or apologize when we hurt each other, even if we didn't intend harm. You want me to keep going?
Sure, you can do the last two.
Okay. Hold space for probable good intentions while acknowledging that intention and impact do matter. Welcome feedback and accountability from one another enthusiastically and give it generously. Generously.
Thank you, Darlene. And I think maybe our batch.
I can do that.
Thanks, Shay.
Acknowledge the contradictions. Hold a larger vision of big intergenerational world-changing work and honor realistically the short time frame and limited scope of this one effort inside of that long arc. Be generous and reverent of people's lived experiences, especially stigmatized experiences like incarceration, arrest, poverty, homelessness, abuse, and addiction. Check our biases individually and together. work to attune to safety, value the quality of our human experiences together, and aim to make things safer, while acknowledging that safety looks different for each person and is never guaranteed. Make change in our community through both the process and the production of outcomes, and hold the responsibility of confidentiality with reverence and respect, respect informed consent and how information is used.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. So, and we can move on now, unless anybody needs any conversation about the agreements, to a brief check-in about where we're at in the process. Sound good? Awesome. So, it's been a moment since we had a meeting that was formatted like this. We are on the cusp of the transition from the listening phase of this project into the next phase, which is combing through all of our data and de-identifying the things that are still in their raw format, and some other tasks that we're going to talk about later in this meeting. We had 2 public forums since last we had a committee meeting. One which was quite attended, the other which was somewhat attended. Both of which people shared a lot about their experiences. Both were, I would say, more emotionally intense than our average committee meeting. Thank you all for your space holding there and your co-creation work there. One part of the process that I wanted to briefly check in with you all about is that a community member, I don't remember when this was in bad dates, but a community member wrote to me and said, did you know that the select board had invited the police to do a special meeting to talk about their policies and procedures on November 24th, I think was going to be the meeting. And I hadn't heard that from the select board, which was slightly surprising to me, given the overlap of the work that we're doing for the select board. And so I checked in about that, and there were various people had various things to say about why that was happening, and I wasn't at the meeting where they decided to do that. So Emily and I went to that meeting and mostly listened to the police chief and the police captain of Brattleboro Police Department share about their policies and procedures, about their practices and what they do. And I asked some questions when it was time that were process questions. I had questions about what the function of that meeting was in the context of the work that we're doing, how it might impact the valuation of the work that we're doing, if at all, and about the sort of lack of communication or collaboration in holding that piece while we're doing this very related work here. I had no questions about what the police shared at all. They did fine, but just process questions for the select board about that. And I wanted to share that with you all. I shared with them that if we had been notified about that, we could have warned it as a joint meeting even, and you all could have showed up and listened. But because we were not extended that notification, or let alone work together about what would be effective, we weren't really able to call you all there and let you know and bring you all into that space, because we wouldn't have been allowed to. We could have maybe observed, but we couldn't really talk as a committee in that space anyway. And they said that they were still going to really value the work that we were putting forward. And I let them know that, you know, we should maybe get a special meeting to present our findings at the end of this as well. In addition to just, some concern. One of the select board members said something like, I see these as two halves of a whole. And that what I named it, that was concerning to me, because that's about 50% of the amount of the whole that we would have been listening to otherwise. Every year, apparently, they invite each department of the town to do a budget and report about how things are going. This one was extended to its own special meeting because of the year that we're in around policing. And after that meeting, Brandy wrote a public apology on the internet saying she could have thought, paraphrasing, you can read it yourself, but she should have thought more about asking those with power to speak first instead of asking for our findings potentially to come first. And just acknowledging that the process wasn't totally collaborative. So I just wanted to give you all a brief check-in about that. We don't need to get into a big discussion about it, but it wouldn't be transparent for you not to know that meeting happened. And I think it was a good reminder for me that I need to stay engaged on multiple levels. And we will soon be bringing things back to the select board anyway, but I wanted just to let you all know that piece of the process happened. And Emily let them know too about some things which she can share with you.
I just wanted to quickly say, because I was there, that I loved how you two sort of acknowledged that and delivered some information. And I didn't quite hear an answer to your question or hope about us getting a special meeting. And I hope that maybe at some point you'll tell us you've heard that, yes, we will.
It was sort of like a tongue-in-cheek ask, so I can do a more formal ask about that too. I also tongue-in-cheek asked Ian to do a ride-along with us because he did a ride-along with the PD. I don't know what a ride-along to our committee would look like, but I gave him a good wink in there. So Maya asked in the chat if this is a series of meetings related to their budget process. So what I heard from them was that there is a series of meetings that happens in this season around the budgeting process where they invite departments in to speak, but that will be continuing to happen, including with the PD and the fire department and everyone. This special meeting was pulled out and given more space because of, in Liz's words, due to George Floyd and the uprisings. And again, my question was just about process. Does it make sense to have a special meeting for them to share their policies and procedures when you're spending many, many thousands of dollars on a citizen committee to look at those same policies and procedures and share their findings about that? So we will keep moving, and it's fine, but I just wanted to let you all know that happened.
Can I quickly ask, was it a public meeting and was it well attended, and what was the sort of tenor of the questions, if so?
Yeah, I'll respond, Shay, if you'd like. It was a public meeting. It was properly warned, again, as a special meeting, kind of like how our creative public forum was warned as a special meeting because it was outside of our regularly scheduled Monday night meetings. So this wasn't a regularly scheduled select board meeting. I believe they meet every other week. I might be wrong, but that's my understanding, bi-weekly. So this was like an additional meeting. It was public and warned, and it was attended. There were several members of the public there. I don't remember exactly how many. And the format, you can probably watch it somewhere, I assume. But the format was mostly actually was the police chief and then the captain sort of presenting out on their policies and procedures. There were, Kelsey saying it's already posted on BCTV. So the police chief and the captain presented for at least 45 minutes total, I would say, just presented out on the sort of some history of the department and cultural history and some areas that they feel like are strengths and some areas they feel like could need improvement. And there was some question and dialogue from the public, but not a ton. And I shared some information about we shared about the listening work that we're doing that's included in, as Shay shared, wanting to make sure that the listening to the community that we're doing is highlighted and centered as per the proposal and the RFP process that we all went through to get here. And also shared the depth of policy procedure and data review. There's a fair amount of discussion about data. And so I shared that myself and some members of the committee are focusing on, are really actually looking not just at the policies and procedures themselves, but also about how the practices and the data and the experiences that we're hearing from people match up against the policies and procedures, which was a missing piece in the presentation I was really just more about like, these are our policies and procedures. I think like on use of force, they wanted like explanation of policy on use of force, for example. Whereas we're looking at data, right, around actual implementation and practice around those policies. So a reminder to the select.
And in our listening, it's both the statistics of like, who is use of force happening with? How does that occur against the policy? How aligned or misaligned are those things? And also, how are people's experience of that narratively, qualitatively being shared with us? And I shared that. In some ways, it's like we have a higher burden of proof, right? Mm-hmm. Which makes sense because we are advocating for some things to change. And so anytime you're advocating for a change, you're going to be expected to show why change is needed. Mm-hmm. And I understand that. And also it just felt like very ill-timed to me to have that meeting happen without that other information that's just coming right very, very quickly after. That's going to fill in the picture so much and add so much depth and texture to that accurate information that they shared about their policies and procedures. So, and I shared the link in the chat to that. It's long. All of the meetings that happen are long. So engage at your own joy or peril. Great. That's my only process check-in. Then, a break happened for mourning and grieving and feasting and whatever other people do in their 4-week break around Thanksgiving. And now we're here. Does anyone else have any check-in they need to check in about before we move on to our next agenda item?
Go ahead, Bob.
So I don't want to belabor it, but I think first it was a special meeting for the department because the department is large and had its own meeting separate and apart from other departments as part of the budgetary review process. The other thing, as far as descriptive, I think what I got out of it was that the chief looked at the last 5 or 6 years and what's been done, and the captain kind of looked at what needs to be done going forward. From that, I got a few interesting notes that I think interface with the work that we're doing. But it is more forward thinking in terms rather than just analysis of policies and data that already exist. But a lot of that stuff interacts. I mean, we had questions about, how do you analyze data, and they're also trying to figure that out. But don't want to belabor that much longer.
Thanks, Bob, for sharing.
And I want to clarify that I asked what the process was for the meeting to occur, and it wasn't due to department size. It was due to this special year around issues of policing. Was the answer that I think that's my interpretation of the information that was shared with me in that meeting, and you can look at the video and see what you think, but that's what I
attended or listened to the select board meeting when they decided to have this special meeting also. And it was very much that there was even discussion amongst the select board. Well, isn't this what the committee's doing? And won't we have this conversation? And then some of the select board members said, yes, but I think we also would be remiss to not do our due diligence and also interrogate the chief and captain around excessive use of force, I think was this primary factor. So it was really clear that that was the intentional, yes, wrapped up in the budget, but absolutely what Shay said. And I'm not going to belabor it either, other than to say it was very comprehensive, but there were big gaps in sort of certain things that have gone on in the department or sort of areas of their work that a lot of their time is dedicated to that they didn't touch upon. And certainly areas that we're thinking about that some areas they did highlight. but some they just didn't even speak of. So I just wanted to say that.
Mhm. Mhm.
All right. Checkity check. Moving along.
So next we wanted to hold, oh, go ahead, Cass. Go ahead.
Sorry, didn't see on the schedule, but it's one mention we're having a mental health and crisis related listening session tomorrow with HCRS. Did someone mention that already? I'm sorry. Which if I can grab the link, I'll share it in the chat. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Please do. Thank you, Kaz, for that reminder.
I will say that so far is a really emerging theme in our listening, that's really been quite central to a lot of people sharing, and is the ways that all of those systems come together around crisis response and policing, what might be called soft policing or hard policing in that area. So I'm excited that there's going to be a space dedicated to people who have experience in that system sharing. And that's going to be facilitated by CAS and Malika Puffer, who's the director of peer support at HCRS, and my partner. I won't be there. Keep it clean.
Oh, shoot, I will. Okay. Reminder. Appreciate the reminder.
I do what I can for the people, Emily.
I just really quickly want to sneak in a thank you while you're sneaking in a thank you that my brother, Austin Rice, has volunteered his time to post our meetings on BCTV. He works for BCTV, and he advocated from the beginning to have us have that exposure. And so he's doing it voluntarily on his own time. And so I've held back saying anything this long, but thank you to Austin. We really appreciate it. And it's helpful to get exposure out there a little bit more.
Yes, big thank you.
Huge thanks to Austin for that.
Thank you.
Any other check-ins? So we wanted to leave some time in our meeting today just to review our agenda items coming up. We want to talk about the public forums, have some space to debrief the public forums. We'll kind of check in about working groups and tasks that we've been working on. We'll talk a little bit, and then we're going to essentially talk about what's to come, like December. What does December look like in this project? So I just want you to know that that's coming as we also take a breath and pause and look back a little bit to look at the public forums. So there's we have as sub-agenda items here, gratitudes and themes from listening. The public forums were the opportunity that we had as a committee and as a project to really listen in this very public and as in person as we can get right now space. And I'll start off just to say such a strong thank you to those who showed up and shared their experiences. I know it wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy ask that we were putting out there. And that includes committee members. And so I feel really grateful to those who showed up and certainly those who shared, and also those who didn't share and showed up and held the space with us. I'm really grateful for those spaces we were able to carve out together and hold. And I also want to say a big thank you to the committee who really held the space for those two forums. I feel like it was a marked difference. Shay and I spent a fair amount of time sort of prepping for these meetings and facilitating them. And I really felt held in those forums by you all. So I'm really appreciating the diversity and the shared power and holding of this committee. So thank you.
I also have huge gratitude for everybody who helped hold space and witness, share and witness and listen. And I think there's a really big a theme that I'm coming to in the listening myself is how much people need just witnessing and accompaniment in their truths. And sometimes that can be really hard. And sometimes it can be really emotional. And I feel like a lot of gratitude for you all in just being there and holding that and witnessing. And I think that that's also something that is happening in this committee that is a difference from many other spaces, town meeting spaces that I have been. And many people have shared with me, at least in listening, like that your average official town space does not really feel like a safe space to share your like vulnerable realness. And I feel that and understand that. And I'm really grateful that you all have helped co-create a space where things could get pretty raw and also be mostly safe feeling, I think. Although that's never a guarantee. We try. Thank you for holding that with us twice.
And thank you for your song. I know it was a bit of a, like, hoping for more of that creative open mic feel than what happened, but I appreciated your song.
Thank you. It was really funny to be first and only in the singing and screaming department, but it was great.
And I'll just add a gratitude. This is Laura. That for me, like just being on the committee and hearing the stories in that public forum, I feel like is a really powerful experience. And I know that we're going to look at more themes from the de-identified data, but I do just feel like hearing from these people that we like know in our community was a really important piece for me. And so I have a lot of gratitude to that. And I also have gratitude in the way that our agreements come out to play, even when things get a little rough. I feel like I have used it as an example that I've been working with teenagers when we come back to norms, and it's actually okay. Like when you have to use the norms, it usually means that like really good work and learning is happening. And so just appreciating everybody going back to those and really leaning into them.
Thanks for that, Laura. Other folks who are present are welcome to share their reflections or themes that they have come to also.
Hi, this is Drift. Yeah, I just want to echo what I've heard everyone say, and it was such a powerful experience to bear witness, and I just want to honor the power of the youth voice I heard come out at those gatherings and the historical information, because I've only lived in Brattleboro a little over a year, and it was just really profound to me, and I'm really grateful for those who shared and proud of this committee and just the beauty of that space, as difficult as it was to hear the stories. And yeah, so thank you to all the organizations and people who showed up and took that time. You already, like, marginalized communities already do so much extra duty and so much extra work. And so to show up and give more energy and resources to get on record meant a lot to me as a committee member. And so I'm privileged to have been there. Thank you.
To piggyback on what everyone else has already said, I also want to acknowledge the tireless work on behalf of the minority groups in this town and the individuals who constantly fight for this change and work on this and step up every single time a new initiative is brought to the foreground, even while not much change happens on the ground. And so I want to acknowledge that work is exhausting and seemingly never ending. And so I'm really thankful for the people who continuously do it.
Thank you for that.
I want to also express gratitude to everyone who shared and everyone who showed up. But I also want to speak to how powerful a tool that was. Like, I think in my logical brain, I thought, like, of course we should do this. This is a good thing to do. It's good to, like, there's use in talking in public. It's useful to be together in this space, especially now when we can't actually physically be together. But I actually found, like, my thinking on things challenged in a way that is not by reading data, and that, like, broke open some things that I had held in my mind that were, like, things that had from my own life that I had thought were, like, the only option. I felt like that those forums as a tool were so useful in a way that's like, words are failing me clearly, but, like, it's so not kumbaya. It's like that was more useful to me than reading a 20-page document that's like, here's all the data on how who gets the short end of the stick in this system. And the themes that emerged surprised me. And I just felt it was like an amazing way to do this work. So thank you, Emily and Shay, for structuring that.
Thanks. Sometimes I have a fear that part of this role is as a buffer from other people getting that benefit that you just named, because I feel like it is such a privilege to hold people's stories, and I have been I've been holding a lot of stories in this time, and it is so impactful. It is so seriously impactful to listen to people share their raw, real truths about these things. And I wish the people with decision-making power could experience some of that directly. And maybe there's a way that they can. Maybe we do send the link on, or some kind of I think a highlight reel would be too Frankensteined together. But I feel like there's something there that's exactly true about the impact of just being in space with people respectfully and listening. And I hope that impact can travel back up, however we can make that happen. We shouldn't be the only ones to get that impact.
I'd like to briefly comment on that holding space. Oftentimes my experiences in my story do sort of conflict with a lot of the movements behind what we're doing in a way. But what's really important to me, and why I will continue to, share those experiences, is that I bear witness and hold space for many community members that are not in the position to speak, that have lived very similar experiences to mine, yet they're far less privileged than I am. And, despite their struggle, just far harder than mine, they feel strongly that they need the protections that I feel I need. So, again, I recognize that we need alternatives, and I recognize that, what we're doing isn't working. But I'm going to continue to share my experiences, because it's not just, Kelsey's unique individual, circumstance. I chose to sort of use my voice and use my experience to advocate for others that can't advocate for themselves. So I know not everyone's perspective and needs are the same as mine, but there are a lot of survivors still experiencing abuse, or are fighting their way out of it. And the fight is just beginning when you end the relationship, really, that need a stronger support from the community. And I really see the police, and in whatever way that may evolve or change, that's an agency of men primarily, right? And when you think about domestic violence, we need a massive paradigm shift around gender roles. And I see, where we've come to where we are right now in terms of women's rights and domestic violence that's been on the backs of women. And I think in order for us to get further, we need men, right, to join the force. So I guess I just want to say that I, at no point do I think that my perspective is every survivor's perspective, but there are many voices on the streets of Brattleboro and surrounding Brattleboro that I do hold space for that are really, really suffering and are scared. And so I guess I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Kelsey, for saying that. I want to piggyback on what Kelsey said and make sure that we make it clear, too, that there are people who fall outside the gender binary who also suffer from those things. And if not, suffer from them as well, but at greater rates, because they're outside of the binary of what the norm of society is.
Absolutely.
But I agree with everything you said, Kelsey. I just want to make it clear that like gender in and of itself is a violent structure.
Yes. Thank you, Lana, for mentioning that. Yeah, I'm also a domestic violence survivor and fall outside of the gender binary. So thank you for bringing that up.
Same. And I'm grateful that you named too that is both a voice that you hear and not a monolithic experience of all survivors, Kelsey, because as is represented in this very committee and out in the world, I think it's true that statistically the majority of survivors don't ever utilize law enforcement, and that is probably for a number of reasons, including that we see often dissatisfying results from some of those who do, and also for a million other reasons. And for many people, that is the tool that has that folks have felt is the most available and protective to them. So there is a huge diversity of experience that's in that realm. And
well, sometimes there's oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Sometimes it's a last resort, right? There's no other safety or anything else that you can access, right? Or you've tried everything else and that's the last resort. So yeah.
In terms of themes of listening, which is sort of the next sub agenda item of this debrief, one of the things that comes up for me is one of the words I would use is awe. And this is, in large part because of my whiteness and my white privilege, the awe of how differently people experience the police. And I think that is probably true of a lot of different systems, but here we are talking about safety systems. And I think there's a similar theme going on with mental health where there's, your neighbor's struggling and you call the police in this spirit of help, getting this person help, right? That's the intention or spirit of that call. And very often what's missing in that intention and spirit is the centering of the person's experience of whether or not the police are going to actually be a safe person to call, for that experience that the person is having. And I'm struck in our process here. I'm struck by the call that what we're being called to, which is to synthesize and understand these various different perspective and lenses, right? And for some, the police are a last resort. Police are the last place where a sense of safety can feel established or accessed. And for many, that the police are never that last resort. The police are never going to be safe, even if that person is being actively aggressed by another person, or even if there's abuse in that moment, that the police will still never represent safety, or calling the police will never feel like an access point to safety. And I think that is, I've appreciated it, although, I recognize it's come at the expense of people having to reshare their story over and over again in the hopes of being heard this time. But I recognize that that's where we're at that chasm as a society, I think, recognizing that there's, the safety I might feel as a white person calling the police to get help. There are people in my own community, in my own family, that will never feel safe making that phone call. And that's a chasm that, we might not be able to bridge as individuals, but I think as a committee and as a community, it's our responsibility to stand at that edge, at that precipice together, and ask ourselves, how do we look at this question of community safety from a place that includes every person's sense of safety? And that's a theme that's really coming up.
Sorry, Emily.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say thank you so much for saying that. And I want to say, on a personal level, I have been assaulted in my life numerous times. I left home as a young person, and some of those assaults were very clear cut. If I had been a different person, possibly I would have called the police. And I never did. Not once did I ever believe that the police would come and protect me. Not only that, but I understood that the system that backed up the police was also going to be violent, that every single step of that process was going to be painful and violent and under bright lights and a white gaze. And even though I might be in a more privileged position now in my life, I still, that feeling still holds. I still am among the people who I would prefer not to.
And I'll share, just as a listener, that people have shared with me all manner of experiences in this spectrum that Emily's naming, including people who've shared really directly, I was looking at death and I begged for the police not to be called. I would rather go through a deadly experience that is very risky for me than introduce the police, largely due to identity, largely due to marginalization. And that is the question that we need to, I think, be, that's the point of centering marginalized voices in this process, is thinking about who has access to the safety tools that already exist and who does not. If there are people in our community who do not have access to the safety tools that already exist, what are we going to do to make it so that our community safety systems include those people who, for largely reasons of identity, do not feel like they could utilize that support without bringing themselves so much more risk than they would anyway, even in the worst imaginable situations, which I've listened to and don't always resonate with. I don't always resonate with that. I don't always have that overlap of experience, right, with people, but I am listening to many people say that the existing systems offer them no additional safety. And then some people who say that they have, right? And we have to do the job of like making a really big basket to hold all that stuff and think about how are we gonna like move forward and reduce the harm of what exists, or add in more supports for those people who can't access what exists now. And that's gonna be a pretty big job for December. Hey.
I just wanted to quickly wrap it up with, even in my privilege, as a white woman, going through the process is incredibly violent and painful and under white lights, and nothing about it feels supportive or healing. It compounds the pain as it makes it's horrible. So absolutely. And that's why I'm here. And that's why we need massive change. It's just, there's so many complex pieces and we just have to pull them together little by little. But yeah, so I totally agree with you.
Are folks ready to move on the agenda, or do folks want anything anyone wants to say about the public forums, debriefing? Maybe a good point to move into talking about what's coming.
Hi, this is Maya.
Hey, Maya.
I just wanted to quickly thank everyone for the conversation tonight. I'm just walking through the woods in my hometown. And I'm feeling very inspired and very excited about the level of kind of, I don't know how to phrase it exactly, but movement, vision, kind of like, yeah, it just feels like this process is reaching sort of a place of, like figuring out what needs to happen next. And I'm just feeling very appreciative for all of you and all of your thoughts. That's all.
Thanks, Maya. Hope you get a glimpse of that full moon tonight.
All right.
Well, with that howl at the moon.
With that howl. This would make the second in a row meeting where she has howled. A note for the record. Too feral for meetings.biz. Okay, I think that we need to think about if we want to move on to the agenda, or if we want to take 6:59 as a pause moment. We're halfway through our time. Next, we have updates about the tasks that have been happening, a note about data, and then thinking about the future. What do folks feel about a break now or a break in 10 minutes? Nobody cares.
I think now would be good. I think this is a good time because the rest of the agenda kind of flows together. That's my sense.
A 5
second that.
Cool.
5 minutes?
Yeah, let's come back at 7:05.
05. Break.
Thanks.
Hear ye, hear ye. Welcome back to this week's installment of
Shay, I was, can I say something real quick? I was wondering, and wonder if we should have done this before the break, but I just wanted to see if there was take 5 minutes or so see if there's public comment about the public forum part of the agenda before we move on.
Sounds great.
Okay to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak or share now about public forums that we've held up to this point before we shift our conversation agenda to moving forward? And we have Franz has put up a blue hand. Go for it.
Excellent. Welcome, Franz.
Hi, I think I'm unmuted. Hello, everyone. Well, I wonder if there's some way I missed the second public forum, and I would like to have access to it if that's possible. I haven't seen it on BCTV, and I don't know how to get it through Zoom. So, and maybe there's other people out there who also would like to catch up on something that they missed. So if you have information on that, it would be great.
I think that those videos are going to be available very soon. They take a little bit to process.
I think they're already posted.
Oh, Kelsey's on top of it.
Kelsey, will you post a link in the chat?
Yes, I just know they're posted because my brother does it for BCTV, but
Well, I went there after you said that, Kelsey, and I didn't see them. I may be looking in the wrong place, but I could not find them on BCTV, any of the November meetings, only October.
Oh, okay. Well, I know I saw them listed yesterday, I think, but they'll be there.
We'll look for it and try to post it in the chat before the end of this meeting.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks for your question.
And I'm glad you asked that, because if anyone else is interested, if we've piqued your interest, if anyone else wants to watch those, they are available. And as a warning, the second one is 3 hours long, not 2 hours long, as our average meeting is. Just in case anyone wanted to share some songs or anything. No one did except for me, but we ended up having a very fruitful conversation anyway. So just prepare yourself for a 3-hour haul if you're going to watch that whole thing. Or I don't
I'm
know.
a patient person.
I appreciate that about you. Is there any other public comment from anyone in the participants box? The peanut gallery, as they say. Going once. Going twice. Auctioneer's gavel. I think we can move on to our next agenda item.
Great. Just say Gary's writing in the chat. Hi, yes, your meetings are not posted on BCTV, the last 2 nor your minutes. So thanks, Gary. I will say that the minutes for the 2 public forums, extra thanks to Laura, because those were particularly hard meetings to capture minutes for. But yes, it has been confirmed by both BCTV and the town that the videos and meetings will be posted, minutes will be posted for those meetings. We got that confirmation from 2 separate places, brattleboro.org for the minutes and BCTV for the videos. But we just got confirmation today from the folks that do that on both sides that they are being posted. So if not today, by tomorrow, the minutes should be posted. I did follow up on that. And Kelsey's putting a link now in the chat.
Thanks, Kelsey. Great. All right. Next agenda item is working group task reports, BPD review and listening sessions. I can start. Listening sessions are mostly over. We did so much listening in November. I'll give you a quantifiable summary somehow of approximately how much listening we did eventually, but it was a lot. There are still a few events that are coming up that are sort of for more targeted listening. Susu Heals is doing a little bit of interviewing, co-facilitation for members of their sort of community. That'll wrap up probably by the end of this week. Youth for Change is going to do some listening work, and that'll wrap up at the end of this week. And as Kaz said, Kaz and Malika Puffer are going to host a mental health and policing related listening session for people who have experienced those systems directly only tomorrow evening. Kaz put a link in the chat to that before. So I'm wrapping it up. I'm trying to tie up all the loose ends. If there's anybody who wants to share, I think this week is their last real, we're not going to tell a person they can't talk to us later in December, but we're trying to compile things. So I wanted to ask you all as part of that task update, if anyone would be opposed to me doing a social media email blast tomorrow saying, last chance, deadline extended, survey the end of this week, don't do it. Because a lot of people have been like, oh, I'll totally do it. And they haven't done it yet, which holidays, totally get it, pandemic, life. But I do think that blast might be helpful to folks. Thumbs, blue or real. If anyone is opposed or has questions, you can give me a down or mid. Okay, so I'm gonna, unless anyone has a reason to oppose, awesome, thanks everybody. I'm gonna send that out tomorrow and just say to organizations, to everybody, this is your last chance. Next Monday is the deadline for everything. And that's the same hard deadline we're trying to give the people who are doing co-facilitation work. So yeah, Bob.
I think I'm unmuted.
You are unmuted.
So I don't know if this is totally relevant to this committee, but I know that there was a meeting maybe about a week ago relative to the retreat no longer providing some services,
Yeah.
and that those services may then go to the private sector. And it's not totally relevant to, well, it may be relevant to, I think, community safety issues and how people are supported in the community. And just concerned that that maybe this committee should get some input from that process and to see what the possibilities are.
Yeah. I can reach out to the facilitator of that space. I think it was Kosu, Rosie, and Jed that hosted that. And I've reached out to them about this project as well. So I would be happy to follow up with them and see if there's any relevant things that they want to share that came out of that space. I don't know how confidential or open that space was, but I'll ask them. Thank you for that.
Shay, I believe I did a thing online. It's a meeting type thing with Jedediah Pop and there was somebody else that attended the meeting also. They said it was going to be in the paper or whatever, but it was all about how we feel about the retreat closing down and what's going to happen to the people that are on maintenance and how they're going to get their medicine and who's going to be there to help them and blah, 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 blah. So I'm not sure exactly when it's going to be aired, but I did do that with Jedediah.
That's awesome. I believe
it was.
I think that's the meeting that Bob was referring to. And I can ask the organizers for if the best way to catch up on that is notes or video or what. But thank you for sharing that, Darlene. There are many other community efforts that we will check in about in another agenda item in a little while. But I think that's the major update from listening sessions.
So Shay, overall, did you feel like it was a positive experience from the community? You feel like a lot of people wanted to share?
Yeah, I feel like it was, I think Emily and I have used the word emerging or emergent to talk about the way that this process has happened a number of times largely because of this unique year and the pandemic. It's been really hard to predict accurately how people will participate, but we've been really flexible. By design, the process was really flexible. So for example, I've had very, 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 very few one-on-one phone calls with folks. That was offered as a way for people to share more privately, hoping that, if people didn't want to share in a larger space, they would want to, that was an opening for folks. Very underutilized. The survey has 100 people have filled it out thoroughly. It would have taken a really long time to do that many interviews. The organizational survey has more than 30 responses so far, maybe 35, but there are many, many, many more IOUs on that, which is part of this blast that I'm going to send out. There are lots of people who are very busy and struggle to make time for that, and I think want to. So that's those. There were several listening session, smaller group, me sitting in on people's meetings that exist already, or people hosting meetings for this process. That ranged in attendance from just a couple of people at a time to many. Emily helped me out when I was double booked on listening a couple of times, which shows a level of engagement to help hold space so that we could listen to different groups of people. And then our public forums were, there were quite a few people at the first one, a little fewer at the second, but still some. So yeah, I don't know. I was talking to Emily today and said I didn't really know how to estimate how many people would participate at the beginning of this, but it definitely feels like we have quite substantial information to wade through in December. So that's a measure of engagement that I will stay really busy combing through the responses and my notes and trying to organize things into themes and amounts of sharing about different things. So I think it's been pretty good. I would say in another year, we would do it really differently. We would have a lot more gathering. But for the year that we have been handed, I think we're doing all right. That's what I would say. Bob.
So Gary put into the chat about an email about the CPCC. And I think the CPCC might be a relevant part of this as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about that in a couple of agenda items. So let's just put a pin for right this moment. We're talking right now about working groups that have been happening or tasks that have been happening, and we're going to talk a little bit about some dialogue I've had with CPCC about best ways to connect with them.
To close up the listening update, I think we have done specific targeted outreach to many groups of people, as well as really general outreach to everybody. We've done specific events or like co-attended meetings or like joined with people or had people facilitate things. There's, the mental health session that's happening, mental health and policing session that's happening tomorrow. There's an LGBTQ plus specific listening session. There's specific youth focused listening that's happened. There's been BIPOC specific listening that's happened. There's been specific listening that's happened around DCF, people who have DCF interaction, and more. But I think and there's been some specific ways to reach out to folks who've experienced homelessness and poverty. And those were several of our goals of people to try extra hard to listen to. So again, I think if there's anybody out there who has a burning desire to either share or have their community be heard, we are so flexible and on a time crunch, but I'm really willing to make stuff happen quickly for folks if they want to still share. But that's us. And then there's so many people who don't fall into those categories who have also shared and who've gotten our links to our surveys or attended our forums or things like that. Yeah.
I have a quick question about wrapping up the listening sessions, and as you're working on wrapping up the report here soon, are we as the committee going to have a chance to kind of see and review sort of the synopsis of what was gathered before it's in the report and delivered to the select board, or like what is that going to look like? I know that we're hopefully going to be meeting with folks that have some ideas for solutions. I'm just wondering, will we have a chance to see it before the final product, or what's that going to look like?
I would say my hope is that we can table that very important question to the next agenda item, which is the next steps, because we purposely want to focus on that. And Emily can do a really quick BPD review check-in first, and then if that's okay with you. But we definitely planned on speaking about that tonight, Kelsey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Shay. Yes, great question, Kelsey. We will be talking about that for sure. And I'll just briefly say that myself and Kaz and Kelsey and Bob have been working on weeding through a whole lot of data and policies and procedures and documents from the Brattleboro Police, and have asked for a second round of data to review. And we are going to be performing in the next couple of weeks. I just got the documentation today for the folks that are doing that. We are going to be performing tracers, which I've talked a bit about in this space. But what that's going to look like is we're looking at individual cases that fall into certain categories that we've decided as part of the theme of our review here that we want to look at, like mental health welfare checks, domestic violence responses, and suspicious activity, which is a code that a lot of the police contacts that are received come through as either suspicious activity or welfare check. So we're going to be, we randomly selected cases from a report that we got to receive all the public records related to that case on, and we're going to be tracing how that case was handled through the system and understanding kind of what the system's response looks like in real time. by looking at these cases. So I want to be clear that there's nothing special or unique about the case in itself that we're looking at. It's just a random sampling, but the mechanism, the methodology of a tracer is really all about actually looking at the micro, the individual way that the system responds to certain types of situations, with more than one from each type of case, so that we can just get a sense of, there's the review, the policy and procedures, there's the data, but then we also want to look at what actually sort of is happening, or what actually has happened, to ground those pieces of the review in real-time data. So we'll be doing that over the next week or two. And that will kind of wrap up the Brattleboro, the PPD review. And then we need to do some work as a committee, and we'll talk about this in a moment, with the larger community safety systems. I'm going to be reviewing some data from the retreats, use of restraint and seclusion, which again isn't like central to this process, but is ancillary in regards to the response systems that we have in this community. The retreat is a big one. And I'll be diving in deeper again to, I think I've mentioned this group. We got a big piece of data done by a UVM professor, Stephanie Seguino, that looks at traffic stop data that shows that Brattleboro has some really concerning data around racial disparities in what happens in traffic stops. So I've been alluding to that because that's going to be a big part of the data that we look at for this part of this piece of this larger project. And so we will need to also move forward with one of our deliverables as well, is the community ecosystems map. So starting to really map that out in the next month as well. So thank you to the members of that subgroup that are gathering data and policies and procedures and looking into that. I appreciate y'all's labor.
Great.
Yeah.
So next agenda item is data collection and analysis. I feel like Emily just spoke a little bit. I mean, it's all, you could weave that into all of what we're talking about, but Emily just spoke quite a bit about that. Just to be transparent with you all about what I'm up to on that front, and taking the data that we have, much of which is already somewhat de-identified and most of which is raw, and parsing through it and de-identifying it and taking out themes and taking out, overlap with other stories, and trying to structure that information in a usable format. That's kind of the benefit for me of the listening phase closing, so that now I can focus on taking all that listening and making it digestible to other people. And it's mostly quality, it's all just people's stories and people's thoughts and narrative opinions. So it's going to take a lot of time to do that, which I'm totally up for. But, Emily and I will be sharing, we essentially, all of us who hold information for people that isn't yet de-identified have to do some processing of that information and before it becomes usable. And so this is really the time when that fire is burning most brightly for me, that I'm going to be really focusing on scrubbing and joining information into usable formats for you all to see and everyone else to see soon. And as Kelsey had asked earlier, and we will talk about more soon, that it will largely be shared with you all in the form of this sort of skeletal and then actual report that Emily and I will be crafting from all this information that we've gathered.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that, Shay, which is just to say that, Shay and I are, I was in our committee process, we talked a bit about, what the report creation part of this is going to look like early on. We haven't talked about it in several weeks because we've been focusing on gathering, information and listening. And so now we're sort of moving towards that part of the work. And we do want to be, this is where we were talking a lot earlier on the process about that challenge that we're facing of balancing transparency with an open meeting, right, with the committee, and confidentiality, not just of the individual stories that we're receiving, but also the like, it's not actually reasonable for 11 people to write a report together when we meet 2 hours a week. That's not a super like
in 1 month
kind of structure that really supports like a writing of a report process. So Shay and I have been in a lot of dialogue of, okay, what can this look like? Because we highly value, everyone here's perspective and lens, and y'all been listening, y'all been generating, processing, moving through your bodies, all this information and all of this content that we want to sort of synthesize together into this report. And so the actual like labor of writing the report will be reserved by Shay and I, because that's what we're hired to do. And we only have, after today, 4 more meetings and 2 hours each. And frankly, I think that one of the things that has been, I think, one of the most helpful uses of our time together as a larger committee is the sort of like, is the discussion and the dialoguing about these themes and recommendations, right? And now I think we're finally at a point in the process where we're going to get to dialogue about recommendations. So we've talked about what we've heard, and now we're going to get to talk about as a committee, like, well, so what do we think? What do we think about this information, and what do we want to, recommend based on our findings, right? And so we are going to be bringing sections of the report back to you all, and essentially using this space as a brainstorming session for like, okay, so I can't land this super clear because we haven't structured the report yet, but we're working on it. But there's going to be like a context, right? So like, what's the context that we're writing this report in? And we're going to bring that here, and we're going to all dialogue about it and take notes and capture everyone's sort of perspective, and then synthesize that into that section of the report. Our findings, what did we learn? What are the themes that we found? We're going to dialogue about that. Recommendations, what do we want to, short, mid, long-term, budget-specific recommendations, other recommendations. So we're going to have some facilitated dialogue in this conversation that's going to then come back to inform the report writing. Go ahead, Shay.
Also, we are going to have our hands full in those meetings in some other relevant tasks as well, which I think means that we should just name that we're moving on to the next agenda item, which is future looking at like what's next. But in that transition into this next phase, in addition to dialoguing about so we're still holding a lot of the information because it's not usable yet or visible yet to everybody. So like, as we're rolling through these next few meetings, Emily and I are going to be bringing both like these sort of chunks of the report that aren't finished yet to talk about. And also we're going to be bringing other information that we need to engage with than just our own findings in order to move on to that recommendation phase. So in number 7, of our agenda, it says future tasks include police department budget review. If we're going to be making any recommendations that have anything to do with budget, looking at the police budget and the town budget, at least like we look at it in depth and then we bring something back might be relevant. The ecosystem map team was really, I think, a dud at the beginning. I take responsibility for that, but I think it's because that usable information didn't exist for you all yet. So we can't actually draw a map when everything's confidentially held and nobody can see any information. I think that's going to be a task that's going to be this month, to like take information that we're going to hand over to whoever signs up to help with that and talk about what needs to be represented to the town in terms of how these systems link or disconnect from each other now and what we want. And that can't happen until we show you some of this data, which can't happen until we process some of this data. So that's coming. And then reviewing related projects is another part, so that we have like our data, what we listen to, what the surveys say, what organizations say. And then there's also adjacent or parallel projects happening in the community around related issues that we can talk about whether or not we want to support with our report, whether or not we want to mention at all that that's happening. Like, how do we want to engage with some of this other information? Stephanie Seguino's study being an example that Emily already mentioned, that is going to go in there because she did a deep study about BPD and traffic stops, and it's a lot of great information. But a few other projects that are happening in the community that are at all related to our work are that Migrant Justice and CASP are working on town by town supporting a stronger, fair, and impartial policing policy that would protect migrant community members from police collaboration with ICE. The police already have a policy that's fairly strong, it sounds like, but we can measure those things together. Brattleboro Common Sense has spoken up in at least one of our public meetings about a proposal that they're independently working on to disarm some police for some amount of their time. They have information that they might want to share with us about that project, and we can dialogue about what we think about that together. And there are also emerging efforts to consider the use of school resource officers in the schools, the police in schools. And I'm going to be going to a meeting on Thursday evening to just learn more about that. And if we're all there, we can't talk as a committee, but anybody's welcome to show up to that. I can send a link out later. But anyway, so there's other tasks in addition to just us handing our data to the committee and saying, how do we think about this? We're going to be like doing quite a lot of processing and bringing themes to you all, and we'll be discussing that sort of chunk by chunk. But also we're going to have, in this proposed schedule, which is at the end of the agenda, I don't know if you all can see it, potentially many sort of those tasks wrapped into our meetings, looking at the budget together, looking at maybe inviting some of those people to share about their related projects and see what's going on. Reviewing the different parts of the report and discussing them, and debriefing and celebrating hopefully at the end of it all. But we definitely aren't going to like go and squirrel off and write a whole thing in secret now and not take any more feedback, accountability, or dialogue. But there's also more to it than just what we have learned. There's like, this whole part is like the ecosystem, and then the recommendations. And those recommendations, as Emily said, there might be some that are pretty easily actionable quickly. And there might be some that are like, this is a big system thing that's not working that we need to think about together as a community in the next few years or something. Mm-hmm. And we'll be bringing that every phase of the way. But we have some work to do before that can all happen. So it's going to be in a rolled out sort of basis. And that's like processing information first. Mm-hmm. so that you can see it, so that we can have good conversation about it. Mm-hmm. And potentially also, we might also look at, I don't know how much, but other models. If there's an emerging theme that's like, this one part needs to shift, then we're going to need to think about what that recommendation looks like. And I don't want to do that totally in a vacuum. So I imagine that there's going to be, on my part, some research happening about models, both that the impacted communities here want to see and from elsewhere in the world in similar sized towns or whatever. And we can all be dialoguing about that openly as well. Mm-hmm. But we're going to hold the report writing also. We just have to. It's a month and 11 people is like a cartoon of like the chefs in the kitchen with the too much stuff going on, and it just sounds wacky.
Yeah. And I'll add to that. One task that needs to happen is connecting with the CPCC. So I do see, Gary, you have your blue hand up. We will call on you in a few moments once we're done with this agenda item. But we'll leave some time for public comment. But I've been in communication with Gary, and I would like to meet with Gary with at least another rep from the committee, and anybody really who wants to, but we can't have more than 4 people. So if somebody feels like you want to be involved in the meeting with CPCC, which sounds like it's going to be Gary, please let me know. And because we need to get that meeting happening in the next week. And also the CPCC has a meeting at the end of December, which unfortunately conflicts with our meeting time a little bit, which has made it difficult to attend. But their meeting, I think, is mostly 5:30 to 6:15. So I will probably attend that meeting. I will definitely attend that meeting for that I think it's on the 28th of December. And if there's another committee member who, I'd like to tag team this piece of it with somebody if you want to. There's no pressure for folks to do that, but it's really just listening. Going to the CPCC meeting will be just observing the meeting, but talking with Gary will just be like a listening, understanding more about that work.
In addition to, you're doing sort of like a like looking at the notes of that.
Yeah, looking at all the notes and the citizen complaint process, which I've also talked with the police department about. So it's all part of that larger sort of scope of the CPCC and our police accountability and citizen complaint process in our department.
And I want to just point out that meeting is going to be 3 days before the deadline of the report.
Yeah, that observation. Yeah.
That observation. So we're going to have some, we're going to be using all of the information that we have as we have it.
Yeah.
So we have a very large majority of the information that we need already. We just have to format it and zhuzh it until it's readable and usable. But that information is just going to come late. And we just need to know that about the process. I think that we're going to have to be engaging with the idea of the CPCC, their practices and functions before that observational meeting, because it happens 3 days before our report is due.
Yeah, and I'm grateful that as a citizen committee of the town, there's pretty detailed notes, meeting notes for their committees. So those have been reviewed. So if you want to do the CPCC pieces, which just again is a meeting with Gary, with me, and going to the December meeting, that's all that entails. You can let me know either now or you can send us an email.
By tomorrow.
Yes.
Great.
Bob, did you have something you wanted to say?
Sure. So a couple of things. One is I have no problem working with Gary and you on the CPCC, but I do have a conflict of interest because I know Gary.
Yeah.
So there is that. The other thing that I wanted to get clear on a little bit was I know that on the agenda you have for the 21st of December, the review of the report. But I'm looking to back up from that and try to get an understanding of when you will have had sort of an analysis of what you found, and when will you present that, or will you present that to the committee, and how soon before that 21st date will we get a chance to look at that and be able to digest it? And I asked that sort of as a personal vested interest because it takes me a while sometimes to look at stuff and then look at it again and then think about it and look at it the third time and say, oh, maybe it's saying that, and then have a reasonable question. So what kind of lead time do we have before we get to the report?
Yeah, let me say that one of the reasons why Shay and I scheduled for our next meeting to include the budget, to do the budget review, is because frankly, it gives Shay and I time to analyze the data. There's just so much content. Most of it's qualitative, which means it's not an easy or quick quantitative data analysis for us to then generate a report to give you numbers on. So we are going to take the next 2 weeks to really synthesize the listening data into themes. And I appreciate what you're saying, Bob. I think, Shay, I'm curious what you think about this, but I think we could certainly send you all, not at any level of report or even a draft of a report, but the content of the data, the themes of the data. When we say the data, I just want to be clear. There's the there's what we're really talking about here is the community experiences data, which is again all qualitative. So as we go through that data, we're going to have to, it's going to come to you as themes. That's really the only way that we can present it in a way that's going to be legible, coherent, and we're going to be able to do something with in a 2-hour meeting. You know, we're not
maybe also some quotes, maybe
Right,
also
right.
some numbers.
Yep.
Might be some like, this is how many people that identify as X, Y, or Z are in this report. There's going to be a little bit of quantitative data
Right.
that I pull out of this stuff. And there's definitely, I think, going to be some quotes that are not tied to a specific story, right? That are not identifiable, that are relevant. But largely they're going to fall, I think, so far in these categories that are emerging as we're combing through. How many people talked about their experience as a type of way? How many people had an experience that was where they are naming a specific pinpointed part of the system that needs some attention by us? And in the schedule that you all see in number 7B of our agenda, it says budget review and related project review. That would be, if it's all right with you, looking at the budget together. Emily and I can bring some of that to you next meeting, and potentially inviting some of these other folks from these other related projects to see if they want to present at this meeting on the 7th or the next. We'll still be combing through the data all this week and the next week. On the 14th, the main agenda item is discuss emerging themes from listening and review data, and discuss findings for report, and discuss the ecosystem map. So my thought is that the meeting on the 14th is where we're hoping to have something presentable for you that we can dig into and discuss together. And then we're going to take what you all share with us in that space and in emails and however else you want to communicate with us, and work on that. And then again, present something, more structured, more cohesed, more with the addition of what we've discussed here together on the 21st. And then we will again take it back from you again and keep reworking it until the deadline. So,
and I will send you all.
My sense is just the 14th is the main space where we'll have to discuss that together. And if we want to try to make that meeting longer or something, I think that's totally a possibility, because that's going to be a really meaty one, a really juicy one for the vegans out there. But I think the 14th you may want to email us some feedback after outside of that space, right? Or have other ways of sharing. But I think that's going to be the main dialogue piece around the data. But we'll send you, so we'll bring you what we can next meeting as well. I want it to be rolling. I don't want to withhold from you all at all. I want it to be as transparent as possible.
Yeah, it's also a matter of, we are routinely spending more labor than we expected to on this project. So the labor of it's a lot of it's about how much time Shay and I are able to spend on that piece. But I will send you all the links for the town budget and the police budget before next Monday, so that you can have some time with it if you would like. I'll walk us through that budget review. And then my hope is, Bob, I think we can send you some things. Again, we can't dialogue via email or discuss or make decisions, but we certainly can get information to you to digest prior to a meeting as quickly as we can. And please know that the time between two meetings goes very quickly for us, considering that this is not our full-time gig. So that's part of the
more
challenge.
So for Emily, I want to honor more so for Emily than for me.
Yeah.
I have the capacity to make this. Unfortunately, there's less boundary for me around how much space this can take up. Right. Sometimes it takes up more, but I think Emily, holds many whole roles outside of this process and needs to be present for those professional roles outside of this work.
Kelsey, did you want to share?
Yeah, I was just thinking, this sounds like a lot to pack into 4 meetings, but it also all sounds really important. So I know it's a struggle, but it sounds like maybe we should have some longer meetings, just a thought. And also, I'm wondering about these different organizations and folks that want to present ideas and things they're working on, if there's a way they could send us, written material for us to be able to review ahead of time, that would be super helpful for me to sort of like, otherwise I think we could spend, a good portion of a meeting just talking to one group, right? And so just a way that we could like synthesize, get the information so we're prepared would be helpful. I just don't know how we'll pack everything you just said into 4 meetings.
I know.
But it sounds really important.
I feel like if you all approve it, I can invite either all of those projects. There's no person who's locally formally hosting the school resource officer thing yet. I can keep listening to like where that process is at, both on a local and statewide level, and see if anybody wants to speak to that piece. But it might just be me presenting what I'm hearing is happening on the different state or local levels for that piece. I think that Stephanie Seguino's research is pre-produced. It has already happened, and we could totally send either that or the key elements of that are relevant to you all before we discuss it. And then the two groups that might want to present, who've both named that they might want to present, are the project that's happening with No Mas Polimigras around fair and impartial policing, and the Brattleboro Common Sense proposal that they're independently working on around disarming officers in a specific way. And both of those groups have plenty of written material that's already exists. So if it's cool with you all, I could invite those two for a short presentation next meeting. See if anyone's available to speak for a short time next meeting, and I could send you the information with the agenda. I think we need to warn whatever we're sharing with you all that's not publicly available. So, and those probably are publicly available, but we can send you the information and we can invite them and see if folks are available to come next meeting. You'd have that info ahead of time.
I wonder, Shay and Emily, if it's possible to treat the other projects that are happening sort of the way we would treat testimony that we've gotten and just add it into the data. Like when you're compiling your data, if you add that in, and then when we are able to see the report, we can see that with it, in addition to having some people share. But I think Kelsey's right. It's a lot to add into 4 meetings. I don't see how we're going to accomplish that. And I feel like we could treat it like we do treat any other testimony that we've gotten.
Yeah. I think we have to decide as a committee how we want to add it in, and do we add them all in with equal weight? I will say that the traffic study, as an example, the traffic stop study is so deeply relevant as a piece of data to the very responsibilities of this committee. And so is the migrant justice work, considering that they're making recommendations to policies and procedures, police policies and procedures to make the community safer for individuals, who are migrant workers or here.
For myself, I feel completely confident, Shay, with your ability, and Emily, with your ability to parse out, what is relevant and what seems like along the track of what we're doing already as a committee. Yeah, that's just speaking for myself.
And I think like migrant justice and CASP and No Mas Polimigras, that whole group that's working on that have asked if they could present to the committee. Or suggested that might be helpful. It could also just be helpful for me to pass along whatever they want me to share with you to look at and then discuss. And similarly, Brattleboro Common Sense they showed us a representative from Brattleboro Common Sense came to one of our public forums and spoke a little bit about that. And they've also sent me quite a lot of information that I could just pass along to you all, and you could look at it and discuss. I think I, of course, in my own mind, am measuring the alignment between all the things I'm hearing and reading about and what we're listening to in our work at all the time. That's something I'm doing all the time anyway, right? I'm like constantly trying to read the field and read the very localized information that we're synthesizing here. And I do want to make space for at least some discussion with you all about whether or not these proposals are in alignment with what we're hearing from folks and what we're doing. And so
I wonder if we could get it in an. Oh, sorry, Shay. I wonder if we could get it in an email as a supplementary thing, and then like just read it and vote.
Yeah.
I do want a chance to look through it. I mean, if we've been tasked to be part of putting together a recommendation, right? I know you're writing the report, but if that's supposed to be part of the committee's function, I definitely want a chance to sort of absorb it. I've checked out some of these websites already that we're talking about, but I mean, if they are planning to present something to us, if they could present it in written form, and if we decide they attend, maybe they could plan on it being a really small window of time. If we already have prepared questions for them, that might be great. Or do it the way Lana said. But I think it is important if that's part of what this committee is supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My only question with that, Kelsey, is I'm just worried that because some of those committees might have already been formed, they already have their ideas, they're in a time crunch just like we are. And especially if we're talking about like marginalized groups who are already asked so often to do this work, I want to give them full opportunity to do it, but I don't want to feel like we're adding more work onto their plate. That's my hesitation, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, I think we will get you all the documentation we can send publicly. That's already available publicly. We do have information on all of these. I will say the December 3rd, Thursday night, December 3rd, there is the event for the SRO, the school resource officer discussion, getting police out of schools.
And that's not a local. I don't think that's a local to Brattleboro conversation.
Okay.
I think that's a more statewide conversation, but I'm going to check that right now.
Okay. And again, if more than five or more committee members show up, we have to be really mindful that effectively becomes a committee meeting. We can go and listen, but we can't participate.
Do you know what part of the?
Go ahead.
Sorry, do you know what part of the state that's coming out of? Is that up in Burlington or?
I think Shay's going to check that right now.
Get you that link right now.
It just so often happens that what happens in the state is way up north, and we're in such a different. We might as well be part of New Hampshire and Massachusetts. I mean, in some ways, we're so far away.
Yeah.
So.
There is local conversation happening around school resource officers. I just don't know at what stage that organizing is happening. These other two projects, particularly the Fair and Impartial Policing project and the Brattleboro Common Sense proposal, are both very concrete proposals that already exist. They are themselves. They're a whole thing, and we get to decide how we deal with them. But that is more just like a thing that's sort of happening, and we want to just stay abreast of what's happening. So I'll get you as much information as I can about those things before next meeting, well in advance, like tonight, so that we can at least have a cursory discussion about those next week.
Right, and you'll get the budgets as well.
Yeah.
Annaliese, did you want to share? You're muted.
Sorry about that. I believe there's a conversation going on about creating some Brattleboro specific, but also statewide new policies around what would send someone back to prison, and changing some of the P&P standards, which is enforced by P&P, but often the first, the police are also involved. Is that, I'm not sure what the timeline or how confidential any of that is. Is that something you would like me to get more information on and include in this? Because there would be, some recommendations to make about, police involvement in that, it seems like.
If you have content that's shareable that you can share with us, you can feel free to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, if it feels relevant, for sure. Thank you. I want to offer, I know Gary had his blue hand up for a long time and then put it down. Gary, would you like to share? Did you have a question?
Yeah, take it away, Gary.
Hey guys, I won't keep you too long. I just got a meeting myself with the Human Review Board there about the budget that Shay was talking about, and Emily, but a different kind of budget for our RTM. So trust me, I know about budgets, but I guess I'm going to wait and table what I was going to ask you, because I see you guys have enough on your plate. There was an addition I was going to mention about the Department of Labor and their practices on people in the workforce, how many people they hire, what type of discrimination, all that stuff. But you guys have enough. I mean, something like that could probably be brought to another forum at a different time. And then, if you don't have time to delve into that, to get fact finding on that, to see how many people they hire in specific places, demographically and all that, because it's deep. There's a lot of stuff too, and that's involved with that. People dealing with hostility at workplaces and all that. Yeah. That does deal with, in a sense, a person being intimidated on the job, be it with security or whatever, things like that affect or anything. So, or with divorces. But yeah, that's a whole separate thing. But as far as CPCC, I got the blessing from Lizette. So the second looks very good, bright. But I encourage people, if you can't wait or if you can't make it, you can go on the Brattleboro.org website under the committees, and our minutes are posted. If you guys have any questions or any Q&As or whatever, please feel free to send it to my way or to Lizette's. As far as that day's concerned, that looks good, because it's going to be a lot of topics, a lot of things and questions you're going to probably be answering that's applicable and applicable to what your committee is doing as well. I guess, basically, if you, like you said, it might be conflicted because of the day that we have it. Ours is at 5:30, but I don't know if you could just maybe peek in, and just, see what the topic is of the day and what's going on would be good. And then later on, we'll post ours up, I guess, the day before you have you can see what was transpired from that particular meeting with the minutes. Because like I said, a lot of the minutes are up there already. We're getting ready to put up another one just recently. We had from our last month's meeting. Last week's meeting. So yeah, definitely. If any questions or anything, please send it to Emily or Shay. Feel free. And another thing, tomorrow, if any of you are interested, they have the tenants meeting on the select board. It's something that is important. And I hope I see Shay and Emily there and the rest of you guys. This is a very important thing that's coming up, and it has a lot to deal with going on with the security deposits and other things, because they retabled it again. So I will be on there. So hopefully I'll see you guys, and I'll try to attend your next meeting. But there's a lot of meetings coming up December to close out the budgets. So I don't know if you guys look at the calendar on Brattleboro.org. So I see your meetings in a TBD. So I just wanted to just make sure that the TBDs are definite, so I can show up and pop my head in there at some given time. And like I said, ours is at the 28th. So hopefully, like I said, yeah, I'll see you guys then. Mr. Oser has been there. Yes, it is a sense conflicted, but he's attended a few meetings. So he knows what they're about. He's my oracle. I always go to him for advice as well, too. And I can always come to you guys for any questions or Q&As also as well. That's a part of all the committees that deal with, racial harmony or disparity, whatever it may be. So I'm going to wish you guys luck. I'll be there, and hopefully, like I said, I can see you guys at one of the meetings.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks for being so available and for joining us on this process. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Gary, as always.
Oh, Doug. I'm sorry.
All righty. So
I want to
wrap up.
I want to
go ahead.
think about that, which is just that if a bunch of us show up to those meetings, that's fine. If we're showing up as a committee, we need to be quiet. If we're showing up as individuals and it's not related to our committee work, we can speak, but that's a little messier. So just when I'm entering public meetings these days, I'm scanning for you all, and I encourage you all to do the same. Because if there's a bunch of us in the space, namely 5 of you, because I'm not a committee member, then we need to be just listening in a listening way. We can't participate as ourselves as the committee. And there are the tub and the security deposit, last month's rent discussion tomorrow night, and this school resource officer event, which I linked in the chat, is a Facebook event that's hosted by a lot of different people. It's hosted by Rights and Democracy Vermont, Human Rights Commission, Vermont Coalition for Ethnic and Social Equality in Schools. And there are a bunch of local organizers who will be attending that, who are doing some work around that more locally. So if I see you there, we'll either talk or be quiet, depending on our numbers. Emily.
All right. So just to sort of wrap up here, we're going to send you the town budget and the police budget, and we're going to dive into that next meeting. So feel free to look at it in advance. If you don't get a chance to, don't worry. We're going to walk through it mostly line by line, and really look at what we're working with. And we're going to also send you some information on those ancillary programs that are happening, and we can carve out some time for discussion on that in our next meeting. And then as we go, we will send you, we will be reviewing the next 2 meetings after that. We'll be really getting into the juice or the meat of the report, our findings and our recommendations. Yeah.
And I am going to invite the people from those 2 projects to attend the meeting because we're going to be talking about their work, and I think it's fair.
Yep.
We don't even need to necessarily carve out time for a presentation, but if we're going to have time for discussion, it just makes sense. They've asked, so I'm going to tell them that we're discussing the fair and impartial policing and Brattleboro common sense at least. And I can also send you the information that I have so far received about those things as soon as I have that. Great, thanks.
Thank you all so much.
Okay about our schedule moving forward? Quick but doable?
I just say thank you for being the report writers. We all have other lives and jobs and things, and it's so important. So I look forward to seeing it as you have it ready so we can be part of the really important discussion. But thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
We'll be sharing as we are. Thanks.
Thank you all. I'm really grateful.
Thank you.